Welcome, everyone. This is Henry Ijams from Paystream Advisors. Thank you for joining us today. We've got a great session planned for you. Purchase-to-Pay in 2020. This is the first of our webinar series thinking about the future of what Purchase-to-Pay will look like in the next 6 years. Today, we're focused on supplier self-service, including supplier registration, supplier portals for invoicing, supplier portals for order acknowledgments. I'm delighted to be here today and sharing the podium with Vishal Patel and Sandy Hicks. My name is Henry Ijams, and I'll be one of the presenters and moderators of today's call. Today we also have Sandy Hicks and Vishal Patel. While I'm doing their bios, I'd like you to let me know that you can see the slides, hear my voice, by going to the control panel and typing in the word GO in the Questions tab. The Questions tab in your control panel, type in the word GO. That will let me know that you are ready to begin. Well, it's a pleasure to welcome Sandy Hicks to the stage today. Sandy is responsible for overseeing procurement and payables at the 4-campus CU system, Colorado University system, and has been doing this for, well, at least 10 years. And what's so exciting about the case study that we're going to be learning about from Sandy is that, yes, they do have Purchase-to-Pay, and Sandy is the Chief Procurement Officer and Head of Purchase-to-Pay activities for the whole 4-campus system. So they're pretty innovative, especially, well, even in the corporate world, you consider them innovative, but amongst the university settings, they're really innovative. So we're delighted to welcome Sandy. Thank you. We also have Vishal Patel, who, well, is a former industry analyst, kind of doing what we do at Paystream Advisors. He is now working in a marketing role at TradeShift, and we're going to be asking him his perspectives from the industry of what he's been seeing in the marketplace, and giving some perspective on what TradeShift is doing and how they're trying to answer the changing environment of what we see in Purchase-to-Pay. Alrighty. Well, thanks everyone for answering the poll questions. We'll be doing some polls and giving me the goes and letting me know you're ready to begin. Today's session, we're going to be talking about the future of purchasing, of course. We're calling it Purchase-to-Pay 2020. We want to take a look at, see what's next 6 years ahead look like. We're going to talk about what we think of the drivers of this change, because we think it's going to be dramatic, and we want you to sort of ride along with us to understand why we think it's going to change so much. We've got at least 3 for you, and a live one here with Sandy from CU. And lastly, I'm going to leave you with 4 key strategies that you can incorporate as you think about bringing in supplier portals into your process. So let's get started. Paystream Advisors, for those of you new on this kind of call, is an education, research, and consulting firm focused on Purchase-to-Pay and financial operations. For the past 14 years, we have been providing information, education, and consulting services to organizations of all sizes. We have a special focus in healthcare, higher education, utilities, and we in groups with those. We have a conference each year. You'll learn more about that. It's coming off, September 8th through 12th in San Antonio, Texas. Well, you'll be learning from some of the same faculty that are here today. And we also have a certification program to teach and educate managers about how to transform their business into Purchase-to-Pay operates. You see after my name about the speakers, C2P2, that means Certified Purchase-to-Pay Professional. And I'm one of the first certificate holders. I guess when you're the professor of the class, you have to get the certificate yourself. It's a 2-module certificate course, which we also offer online or live at our annual conference. So let's dig in here. The broad Purchase-to-Pay automation trends and how they relate to our theme today around collaboration with suppliers and supplier portals is that, of course, you know that AP and purchasing are rapidly moving out of the paper business. And Of course, everyone knows that we want straight-through processing, touchless processing, where documents can move from a requisition to payment without a lot of touching. And in many cases, we want zero touching. Well, sounds nice. Of course, the reality is it's not easy to do. It's challenging. But even more than that, we see a world where the innovators have really been able to reduce exception rates aggressively by using new collaboration paradigms. And we're going to explain what that means today. But essentially, we know this. From the over 40 companies that are in our benchmarking studies, where we do deep dive and ongoing interactions with their managers, we're focusing more and more on exceptions. And we know that exceptions cost organizations 4 to 5 times the standard cost of managing the invoice or procurement process. So this is what the innovative managers are looking at. So what does this mean? It means that we know that staffing is our highest controllable cost for purchasing and payables. We've got to drive out these costs. Hey, you like this picture of this kid screaming? He's screaming at us because he sees the future. It's so bright he had to put eye shades on. But this is only a 3-year-old. Well, in a few years, we're going to see more of these 3-year-olds doing incredible things with technology. On the plane to my recent consulting assignment, I saw a 1.5-year-old working on his mother's Kindle device, playing a game that it was incredible the way he was navigating the screens. And this was a child that could not speak yet. We know how fast things are happening. How many of you have tried or are familiar with Uber? Uber, that taxi service that you can order from your mobile device. Well, it's revolutionizing taxi. Does it have any relationship to what we're talking about today? Absolutely, because essentially what we've done is we've not just eliminated the taxi company. It's not we're trying to get rid of the taxi owners. What we're doing is peer-to-peer. We're connecting people who need a car ride with people who have a car. And we're using technology that we wouldn't have thought of 5 years ago to do it. Who would have guessed that you could order a taxi from your mobile device and it was going to be more convenient than picking up the phone? Well, it is, and this company's valuation is $20 billion, some ridiculous number, and it's just gone public. So it's related to us because we see in 2020 a shift from where we are today with most of us focused on paperless at stage 1, where we're very efficiency focused. Hey, my cost per invoice is $8. If I go an electronic process, I know we can get it down to $2. Well, that's pretty easy to understand. Let's scan the paper. Let's get electronic invoices from our suppliers. Let's move them through our organization electronically, workflow, automated routing, matching, etc. No problem. Order, a requisition comes into our organization. We can move it through purchasing faster because we can do some business rules on it, decide if purchasing buyer or analyst needs to review it. At stage 2, organizations become hyper-focused on the metrics of their purchasing and payables operation. They're using the newfound tools that they have to route documents to say, wow, we could be doing this different. What's different and what we want to talk about today is this collaborative commerce where we're using new tools to interact with how we connect to our suppliers specifically, but of course our approvers. And when we think about this, the maturity stage level 3, only 10% of those 40 or so companies that are in our benchmarking studies are at stage 3. But here's what they look like. They've pushed everything out to the end users as much as they can. In other words, instead of having to pick up the phone to call the taxi company, we're giving them the taxi on their mobile device. That's the kind of shift we're talking about. It's not even a taxi, right? It's a peer-to-peer. We're giving them a high degree of electronic transactions. It's highly touchless. And here's where the real savings come in at level 3. The exception rates go down, which is down from typically 8% for many of our clients who have both materials and indirect. And they can drive these down, typically down to 2.5% once they've been doing this for a while. Why? Because they're using the technology to constantly build out Pareto diagrams of where the errors are coming from and then attacking those challenges. a lot of the challenges, when they look at this, they start realizing that it's because the user that we have in the field doesn't know how to use our old style accounting system and screens, and that they need to change the paradigm of how they communicate with the end users and the suppliers. And then this last thing we're not going to talk about today, but capturing available discounts. So this brings up our first poll question we want to learn from you. What's the status of your collaboration with your suppliers at your organization? So give us some answers to this. Then we're going to jump right into ask Vishal some questions. So what's happening in his organization, and what does he see coming in the next 6 years? So Vishal, tell us a little bit about your background. You were an analyst, and how did you get into working over at TradeShift?
Yeah, thanks, Henry. Yeah, there has been a lot of change in the industry. I've been in this space for about 10 years or so. I was an analyst covering Procure-to-Pay technologies and other similar technologies at Ardent and Aberdeen, and really saw some significant changes happening in the market, in consumer technologies that are available, and saw TradeShift as one of those really fast emerging innovative companies that is sort of bridging the gap between what P2P solutions were offering yesterday and traditionally being sort of a little bit behind consumer technologies, and what consumer technologies offer today. I think TradeShift is bridging the gap there.
Okay, so we want to hear about your vision, but we're going to talk about the results here briefly. Looks like our top vote getter here is that we're not collaborating with our suppliers today, but we want to. Well, they're in the right place. And really nobody's doing electronic order transmission, but it's only, but a lot of people are doing order and receiving invoice. So we have a mix of results here. That's interesting. We've got a great audience. And we're going to ask for you, audience, to ask your questions along the way. So please bring them to us if you have any. So Vishal, let's talk about TradeShift's vision. What is this vision all about?
Yeah, sure. So, there has been a lot of change, I think, but, over the years, what we've seen is companies becoming more and more sophisticated in this area. But at the same time, we've also seen a lot of failed projects due to low onboarding rates, a lack of collaboration between buyer and supplier. I think that, as I mentioned, there's been a gap between what P2P solutions offer and what consumer technologies offer. And that we think that most solutions in the space have not been able to develop modern solutions that take into account some of the largest trends that have been happening, everywhere. And over the last decade, as you see on the slide, there's several mega trends that have emerged, like cloud, mobile, social, big data, and we've all experienced these trends in some way or another in our personal lives, and it's been immensely impactful. However, when you go into work Monday morning, it's a totally different story in the business world. These trends are only just beginning to make an impact, and over the next few years, I think we'll see these aspects increasingly becoming part of everyday business processes. So when we talk about those trends, as I mentioned, there's a few big ones, but there's also what we, some of the key trends that we noted was the entrance of millennials into the workforce, the increasing need for collaboration, both internally and externally, and the accelerating pace of business. Like if you take collaboration, for example, we believe there are now, and even more so in the future, the lines between internal and external collaboration will continue to blur as businesses becoming more connected to each other electronically. If you take the accelerated pace of business, what does this mean? Like take, for example, the fax machine. While technology existed for about 150 years, it didn't reach critical mass until 1987. It took Facebook almost 6 years to reach 500 million users and barely 2 years to double it to 1 billion users. So whether we like it or not, constant change and rapid change is the new global reality by which we live and work. And during the next decade, we'll see that emerge in the business world as well. I think you may have gone through some of the slides that I'm talking to now, but for example, mobile, you saw the slide where mobile phones are increasing at a very rapid rate. The new millennial workforce entering your business now is more used to using a mobile device than a computer. But yet, business software looks very outdated, like you saw on the previous slide. But it also gets worse than that. So when you talk about,
sometimes as finance people, we're like, this doesn't really affect me. This is not important for us. This is not a real trend. I hear some pushback. So how is it really going to impact us? Is this for real for finance people? I mean, some of us, we're in our 40s and 50s. We don't get this stuff. We're like, yeah, I'm talking about Uber, but I travel a lot. Most people on the phone have never tried Uber, probably. Except for Sandy.
Yeah.
I know Sandy uses it.
Oh, that's right.
They have it in Denver, right?
They do, yes.
I think it's going to affect everyone. Whether you are ready for it or not. Businesses being connected, business applications being and business processes being conducted on mobile phones, electronic transactions. That's going to happen. Whether people are ready for it or not. But at the same time, the reality is that you see all this connectivity in the consumer world, but when it comes to business software, it looks more like this. The picture you have on the slide.
I love it.
Businesses are very very much alone, and not alone, but they're challenged as to how well they're connected with their supply chain.
Right, and we're not going to get rid of our ERP systems. We're not suggesting that, right?
No.
These systems are critical to the way we manage the business, but we need to make it easier for our users to interact or our suppliers to interact with us, right?
Yes, the strategy is really to surround the ERP system with the modern business capabilities that allow for collaboration.
Okay. Well, let's turn it over to Sandy. We know that you've been developing your P2P vision at the University of Colorado for at least 6 years. Can you tell us about the environment that you inherited and how it's different from what you're doing today?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. So the environment initially, we were working off an ERP system, and it was very paper-based. Basically, our current strategy is to look at all opportunities to handle transactions through technology. Because if we're taking care of the transactions through technology, that frees us up to work on more strategic initiatives. So kind of to give you a brief history of the University of Colorado, we are a 4-campus system and a procurement service center which serves as a shared service for the 4 campuses. And you can see we have 58,000 students, $753 million in spend. And so currently in our P2P system, we have 5,375 users. And when we had people working off the ERP, we had 1,200 users involved. So you can see the number of users we have engaged in our technology has grown exponentially. And so another thing is 92% of our purchase orders are placed within 1 day. They are delivered electronically.
That's awesome.
We're very proud of that.
Yeah, and you should be proud. And unfortunately, there's still 8% that it takes some time. So yes. I'm a junkie. I want to get there fast. I need it quick. Make it happen.
Right.
So you're trying to make that happen because this is what impacts the end users, right? This is the way they perceive procurement. They're in my way. They slow me down. I don't need them. I can just go and buy on my own.
And any time that we actually survey our users, their number one thing is how fast they can get something, even more so than the money they can save. So, and I did want to mention right now we are doing 47% of our invoices totally electronically, and 71% of our purchase orders are being placed via electronic catalogs.
Wow.
So
that's
this
a big
kind
number.
It is, yes. So we did implement our P2P solution in August of 2011, and since then we've been adding on other modules, which of course one I'll talk about in a little bit. We are a PeopleSoft client, and then this is just a listing of the P2P modules that we currently do have implemented.
Right, you're pretty far along. This is why I said Sandy's in the innovation curve, because a lot of universities are still just working on one or two of these, not all of them. So most recently, I guess you've been working on the supplier management component. Let's talk about that.
Okay. So this just this slide gives a history of what our supplier registration process has looked like. So we had 41,000 suppliers, and we actually went in and purged our database before we went live on our supplier management system. So I'm happy to say we're now down to 23,000 active suppliers. It was very paper-based. We had our own W-9 form, which was required to collect specific small business and women-owned information. We really relied a lot on our departments to interact with the suppliers, so they would get very inconsistent information. We had no automated compliance checks, and then the forms would be faxed into us, and they were very hard to read, so they're very prone to data entry errors. And then we just know our database has been pretty well clogged up, because instead of replacing someone's address, it would be added to a record. So we have tons of records that are now no longer required. And then just the time that it took to run through the paper process was excessive.
Mm-hmm. So this is one of those things you got to after you'd gone through signing up suppliers for electronic invoice, or going through the AP or the spend management tools. So this is in your roadmap. This is like you're just working on this now. So you came after you did a number of other initiatives, right?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And also after we've contacted our suppliers numerous times, very paper-based, which is very laborious.
Okay, got it. So tell us, what was the pain, and why did you need to automate? Why did you decide to do this?
Sure. So as I mentioned, we want to improve the accuracy of the data. And so by taking fewer people out of managing the data, that naturally will improve that. And then we wanted to streamline the process to onboard suppliers. So now we can our departments or procurement can invite suppliers to go in and fill out the form versus faxing forms or sending them to a website. It's just a much streamlined process. And then we wanted to automate the compliance checks that we have to do with OFAC and TIN matching, and then automate the diversity certification. Due to our funding that we get, we have to get certifications on suppliers we use on those federal funds every 2 years. And once again, right now, the automation part of that is it's probably on an Excel spreadsheet, whereas in our system, we can put in a tag to automatically ask them in 2 years to go in and recertify.
Okay, that's pretty important. I wonder if others in our audience have similar types of unique challenges in their industry, so and I bet they do, so that's pretty interesting to sharing that. Mm-hmm. Wow, well, Sandy, thank you. Sure. So that's interesting. So Vishal, so what are you doing? You talked about trade shift and the coming change. So what are you guys doing specifically to answer this growing sort of, you're proposing it's a process gap between what we can use as consumers, like, obviously the example of LinkedIn or Uber, versus what we're doing with our business systems. How is trade shift closing that gap?
Yeah, great question, Henry. Well, trade shift was designed with just that in mind. Our mission is really to enable large and small companies to connect on one platform, to transact, communicate, and collaborate from anywhere using any device. And you can see from the slide you're showing now, it's what we're offering is a simple, intuitive, easy-to-use design that not only AP groups love to use, but so do suppliers. And we have the onboarding rates to prove it. We actually, when we compare our onboarding rate with a specific customer to their previous solution provider, ours was about 12 times faster, and users were onboarded with almost zero training. So there's a lot of design and intuitiveness and built into the system. If you want to go to the next slide, you'll see that TradeShift offers a fully mobile experience. So not only will it meet the expectations of this new generation of workers coming in, but it'll exceed that. And the product is built to be completely responsive to any device. So it offers a full mobile capability. So essentially, TradeShift is a open cloud-based platform. It's a platform that brings together a fast-growing network of buyers and suppliers. If you want to think of it as an iPhone, for example, Apple created the iPhone and various core apps like messaging, email, weather apps. But as many of you might know, there are over 1 million apps available on the iPhone today. And most of them were built by third parties. So there's a tremendous value in this ecosystem of apps that's available on the iPhone. And that's essentially what TradeShift is doing. This platform connects buyers and suppliers. And while TradeShift has built certain core apps and will continue to do so, there are apps that are built by third parties to add value. And even some of our customers have built their own apps onto the platform.
Okay.
You know, if we're,
so that's an important piece. You're talking about this open platform that others can develop. It'd be kind of like saying to Oracle or PeopleSoft, SAP, yeah, we're going to allow it, other guys to just bolt on their applications really easily with us by giving them a connector so they can get the data in and out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And then just to, on the next slide, you'll see that we really like to take a balanced approach to serving the needs of the buyer and the supplier. So we think that this is core to a successful project in this space, in the P2P space. For example, suppliers will never pay a fee on TradeShift. They have the ability to create profiles, for example, like you would on LinkedIn. Suppliers can view POs, invoices, orders, and more from all their customers, not only at one at a time. And then on the buyer side, there's, because there's no fee. Messaging within the document, and we'll have a demo for a few minutes at the end of this session, so you'll be able to see the solution a little bit more.
All right. So summarizing here, you believe that making the supplier a part of the ecosystem is a critical element to engage them. So tell us how this works.
Yeah, I mean, it's really all about creating value for the suppliers. So there's definitely a self-service aspect to the suppliers and what they can do, but it's more than just a one-way portal. We think of it as a more integrated capability with workflow, with them having a view into invoices, with them having the ability to communicate directly within documents. And then there's also the intelligent and uses multiple methods for onboarding. So, for example, we have a product called CloudScan, which allows suppliers to send PDFs or paper invoices to TradeShift, which we then convert into electronic format and then send back to the supplier for validation. But we view this as, yes, it's a way to convert paper documents to electronic, but it's also an on-ramp for suppliers and a way to encourage them to move towards e-invoicing. And the system does this on its own, so it's always encouraging suppliers to migrate to electronic.
Okay, excellent. All right, well, let's go to Sandy. Vishal's presenting a pretty provocative thought here. Can you comment on his theme of connectivity with suppliers and connect that to what that means for UC at Colorado? What are you implementing now to connect to your suppliers? What's your strategy?
Sure. Well, we are currently implementing what's called Total Supplier Manager, which is a self-service portal for suppliers so they can register to do business with the university. And one thing that's kind of nice, it includes anybody can come onto our system on our short form, which will then allow them to do sourcing opportunities with us. but they have to be invited by the university to actually fill out the long form and to do business and get paid from us. So we have those two differentiators. The other nice thing about it is it does have automated OFAC and TIN matching, which before was we had to go outside the system to do those checks, and now those are happening automatically, right? Their invoices are and if they've been paid, you know, whereas right now our help desk takes a lot of phone calls addressing those issues.
Right. Sounds like kind of a win-win here. You're trying to make this more attractive for the supplier to use, not just say, hey, it's for my benefit at CU, but it's for benefit of them too. So they can say, hey, where's my status? How are you going to notify the suppliers that they can check their status online when you go live with it in the fall?
Right. So we will be taking groups of suppliers, so we're not going to do it in one fell swoop. We'll go with the people we use most frequently and encourage them to go in, and they'll already be in the system, so they just need to refresh their data. We're not asking them to sign up as they're a new supplier, since they're not a new supplier of ours. So we'll probably start doing that in the next month, because we can do that before we bring our departments on as far as doing the self-service. So once we feel comfortable with our pilot, which will, I would say, probably be by the beginning of August, then we'll start engaging our other suppliers. And then what's kind of been neat is we've served with a development partner on this software. So we were actually had input and was able to provide feedback to the actual development and prioritization of the functionality for this module.
Right. So you're an early mover. You're helping your service provider. You're telling them what you think it needs to do so that it'll meet the needs and hopefully the needs of other universities that are going to use this as well, I hope.
Right. And we've actually worked with the suppliers to watch them go in and fill out the form, because that's also helped us give better input on how it should be set up and, you know, things that are intuitive. So it's been kind of interesting to watch that.
Okay. Wow. This is great. Thank you, Sandy. I love learning what's in your mind here and how you're making this go out. I hope the rollout gives you time, and I know it's going on this summer, so it gives you time to get on vacation. Enjoy those beautiful mountains, mountains of Colorado. So, Vishal, I know you have some case studies of what some innovative companies are doing. Can you share a couple with us of other organizations are doing around supplier engagement?
Yeah, sure. I think here we have the NHS, which is actually one of the largest publicly funded health services in the UK. It's about 7 million invoices, paper invoices, which are going to be being put through the trade shift system. They service about 160,000 suppliers. The NHS has a shared business services center, which will be using TradeShift. So from their perspective, you know, TradeShift is a platform that they saw as being able to add connectivity and collaboration with their suppliers, but also innovative in the way that it can, you know, extend capabilities with the various apps. And actually, from the supplier side, if you go to the next slide, one of the suppliers to the NHS, a small consulting company, commented on the use of TradeShift, and the owner there and saw it as very, very beneficial and useful and easy to use was really the prime motivator there. We do have other case studies like Archer Daniel Midland, which is a 1427 company. They have global suppliers. They have also a very high volume of invoices, which they've chosen TradeShift to automate that process.
All right. Well, thanks, Vishal. This is interesting. One thing that pops out as me is we have two non-for-profits here. We have NHS and we have higher education, right? So healthcare and education, two industries that are under a lot of pressure to lower cost. Sometimes we see those industries as lagging because they're kind of, no, they don't need to worry about it. They don't have shareholders that are screaming for this. Now it's kind of flipped. It's the other way around. Kind of interesting twist to me. All righty. Well, let's go and let's see about a demo. I'm interested in looking what this actually looks like. I think our audience probably wants to get a look. So let's turn it over to Mark. I know we have somebody who's going to be able to do a All right, Mark, take us through what does this look like?
Okay, can you hear me?
Perfect.
Okay, great. And let's make sure that I didn't get an invite for the screen share.
All right, start again.
There we go. Okay, great. So I want to go ahead and take a few minutes and really show how the software itself helps to remove some of those barriers to the supplier adoption, and kind of take it from a supplier perspective. And one of the first things that we talked about is just the responsive design, the UI, the intuitive nature of the platform. So as we look, this is a completely browser-based solution, which allows basically anybody from any device, anywhere, to be able to interact with it. And how we do that is that responsive design, the adaptive UI. So as I scale my screen, you'll notice that the screen will change. So let's say that I'm on, maybe a tablet. You'll see that the screen changes while it still allows me the full functionality of interacting with the product itself, even down to where if we're scaling it down to, let's say, on a mobile device, you'll notice that it's changed that perspective, but allowed me to still have access to the things that I need to do. So I think that that's really important, because making the software simple to use is going to lead to it being used the way that, to support the processes that you're using it for. When we talked about the different ways for onboarding and the ease of use of onboarding your suppliers, I want to go ahead and look at it from the standpoint of onboarding and registration and leveraging that self-service capability that Sandy talked about. So in this case, I've got Able Communications that sent out to all of their suppliers an invite very similar to what you would get through a LinkedIn invite to be able to join the Tradeshift network. And I'm able to just simply click on and say connect to Tradeshift. And the only piece of information that I'm asked for that first time is just a password. And that will let me get into the Tradeshift platform. And once I'm into that platform, I'm basically able to fill out a profile with all of the information about who I am as an organization, as a supplier, what it is that we offer, what we may buy, and also have other aspects of social, such as recommendations and seeing what customers I'm attached to and I'm connected to as part of the network. And I think unlike other solutions where you would have a separate portal and a separate login for each of the buyers you're invoicing, Tradeshift is a true network, kind of like LinkedIn, that allows you, to connect and service multiple buyers through one single account. And, here's an example of that filled out profile. And this is discoverable by anybody on the network, allowing other companies on the network to, search, connect, collaborate, and transact, all through, one login, one capability. And I mentioned collaboration, and I think that that's another one of the key values to the suppliers. The ability to go in and view my documents and see what's going on with my invoices in a very clean way. And while I'm in the document itself, to be able to directly collaborate in real time. I notice that this isn't overdue, and I'm going to go ahead and ask and say, sorry, or can I get a status on when this is going to be paid? So this is real time and it's posted, and I'm able to see alongside the document that interaction back and forth, that collaboration back and forth between the user, between the suppliers and the buyers. The last thing that I want to go ahead and focus on is another way of being able to leverage onboarding and also bring a lot of value on the supplier side, and that has to do with our patented cloud scan technology. And the key here is that many companies still use paper or email PDF invoices or just invoices of any type, emailing. And from a supplier perspective, when an invoice is submitted via email, it's routed through CloudScan, which uses machine learning to transform the document into an electronic form. And when we look at our CloudScan engine, it goes above and beyond just standard OCR. So we have an average 81% accuracy, whereas when you look at most other OCR solutions, they're somewhere in the mid-60s to 70 range. So on completion of that transformation, the supplier would get an email that asks them to validate the invoice. They'll be able to click on it, and what we see here is what is scanned in through CloudScan, and then that electronic representation that's down here towards the bottom. As I hover over, you'll notice as I hover over an element, it will tell me where it has pulled that information from. One of the other things that you'll see here is that it also has the business rules for me as a buyer or for the buyer of this, of any missing data elements that are required as part of that invoice. And allows me the capability as the supplier to go in this case, I need a registration number, and that's a requirement for any invoices that are being submitted to this buyer. So I'm able to go in and validate this, including any of those additional required fields, and then be able to submit that invoice. And in this case, I as a supplier have not joined up as part of the trade shift. I am then encouraged as part of the onboarding process to also sign up to trade shift to continue on and kind of transform to that electronic interaction and transaction. So, this whole process can be part of the onboarding initiative. And one thing to note on how CloudScan also helped the adoption and transacting of the TradeShip network, we've seen that pretty much every 6 months, about half of the suppliers that are using CloudScan to transform their email attachments to electronic format switch to native electronic invoicing through the network itself. So just wanted to kind of go through and look at some of the aspects of the software, what it means to the suppliers. I want to thank you for your time and pass the presentation back. Henry?
Thanks, Mark. It's pretty interesting to see what you're working on in the future. Maybe the future is kind of here in 2020. You're saying you're doing some of this already today, and that's pretty exciting. Okay, so let's go back and wrap it up for everyone. Thank you all for being here. We're going to bring it home, and I want to ask Sandy to give us perspective on what do you think is next. You are now doing this total supplier management portal. You're engaging with the suppliers. What do you see happening down the road? What do you think you're going to be doing after that?
Sure. So our plan is after we get this up, actually by early fall, we'll be bringing up a new sourcing tool. And then after that, probably the next 6 months of 15, we'll be bringing up a contract authoring tool.
Okay, right. So make it easier for the folks in the field to raise contracts. Contracts, I assume, have some pain for you. For many of my clients, they do, right? So that it's not easy to match against them. So this is going to help you in your P2P straight-through processing theme as well?
Right, and then it'll also allow for electronic signatures with those documents, which will speed up the process a lot.
Excellent. So it sounds like you're feeding into my theme as I wrap this up, the 4 common success factors, and I see companies time and time again like Sandy's who are doing bringing this together, when this comes from our benchmarking studies and research with other companies in the past 14 years, that she's got a long-term plan. She's been marching along the plan. It is interconnected and interrelated. She's got an excellent coalition because purchasing and payables are all under her purview. I'm sorry for you who are industries and companies who don't have purchasing and payables that are connected. It is absolutely a best practice. Also in best practice here, Sandy has it already. They're co-located. Purchasing and payables are in the same building, on the same floor. They can go across the hall when they have a collaboration issue with a buyer, with an expediter, with an invoice processor. It's all one group. It's not a blame game. I know that Sandy measures and monitors a number have the gentleman, the senior vice president from NHS, who saw this opportunity for changing the way business is done and the collaboration. Sandy, give us one metric that's changed dramatically. I know we talked about this earlier in the week. In the last 6 years, is it your staffing levels? Is it the satisfaction of the approvers? Is it the straight-through processing rates? Which one would you highlight as being the most thing you're most proud of what you've been able to do at UC?
Now, Henry, I told you it's CU. You have to get that right now.
University of Colorado. Why do I want to call it UC? UC is University of California, I guess.
I know that, and that's very important to us, you know.
CU, Colorado University, not to be confused with well, Boulder is your main campus. I want to go to Boulder. I want to come back and I want to come back as a student and go to Boulder again.
So, you know, it's really hard to pin it down to one thing, but because I really see this has been an overall transformation. But I would say the thing that we've been able to do is speed up all the processes, which is what our end users are looking for. And actually, we just completed our first satisfaction survey on our P2P software. And 85% of the people that responded, which we got just under 800 responses, that were either satisfied or very satisfied with the software. So we felt very pleased with that.
That's really good. And you know, when we think about the AP specifically, you're doing the key themes that we see as a best practice. Improving the back office and front office to process together. You make it easier, and you have the end users in mind. So many of our clients, they're thinking so much about improving the process in purchasing and or payables, but not what does it relate to the end user. Great call with a hospital client yesterday who is changing their paradigm, and they talked about the turnover in their departments, and that they can never train people enough because it's always given to the newest person in the department to carry out the purchasing activities. Why? Because it's not strategic for them. They don't need to know all the buttons and all the nuances. So they're switching systems so that they can use their profile and narrow down the choices of which chart string to use and have templates that they can use to simplify how they move through the screens, kind of what Mark was showing, how we making it easier for the supplier at the same time. And you have you've developed that leadership, and we're thankful for that. All right, it's time for our audience to give us some feedback, and then we're going to take the questions which have been coming in. Now, folks, if you have a question that you want to ask, you go to the control panel and you type it in, and we're going to give it to our leave it to our panelists here. In the meantime, we want to hear from you about what you're working on. What kinds of automation are you working on in your organization? We'll share the results in about 15 seconds. And then after you answer that, then please, I see the good questions already coming in. Wonderful. All right, let's close this poll. And let's share the results. Let's see how you all are voting. What are you working on at your organization? All right, while we get ready for that, the first question, Sandy, comes for you. Do you have plans for a vendor registration through the solution? I think that we missed that because I think you're already doing that, which means new supplier registration.
Yes. Yes, so it will handle new supplier registration.
Excellent. And Vishal, how about you? In the TradeShift platform, do vendors have the ability to check how their invoice is doing on their own? Can they check invoice status?
Yeah, absolutely. Suppliers can check invoice status at various stages and from multiple customers. So it's not only one, they're not viewing one customer at a time, they're viewing all their invoices on the TradeShift network.
Okay. So Vishal, another follow-on here. It said, Bob, he said, I already have an imaging system. What software do you use to store your documents in TradeShift?
Yeah, so there's no real there's no separate software that's used to store documents. It's stored within the browser. It's in the platform itself. Everything is cloud-based and browser-based, so TradeShift itself stores the documents. There's nothing additional that's needed.
Okay. So that means it would work well on a platform. They could do their own. They could continue to use their own imaging platform that they have in place?
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. I got a question from Susan, and she wanted to know how is it decided whom each invoice is sent to in the routing using the TradeShift platform? If you get a document that comes in, I'm going to paraphrase, I think, what they meant. How do you know where to send it if for a non-PO document?
Those are really based on the business rules that have been set up by the buyer. So it can be based on, a name that's on the invoice, or a department that the invoice is going to, or a reference number. It can be based on various things. So depending on the business rules, that invoice can be routed to any user. And then there's various tolerances and additional rules that can, for example, if that user doesn't do anything.
You tell us if we have any other more questions waiting in the questions queue. Are you on mute, George?
Looks like Roberto asked if he would be able to get the slides after the presentation.
Excellent. That's a great question. Yes, the slides will be distributed, and you'll see them within 24 hours sent to you. So thanks for asking that, Roberto. Yes, we would like to distribute the slides. Okay. Let's see. Someone asked, is the $8 invoice mentioned earlier a real number? Great example, or just an example. Well, Andrew, actually, the average cost per invoice that we're seeing in our broader surveys is about $6.72. You see, I said about, but it's gone down over the past few years. About 3 years ago, it was $8. It's trending down because about 50% of companies that we survey today have some kind of invoice automation, and the average for invoice automation processing cost is in the $4.28 range. So they're reducing their cost, some kind of solution they're able to. So that's a real number. It's not quite $8 though. All right, Vishal, so you showed us how a supplier could load their invoice, and you gave us some examples of an email being sent in. Can you walk through how this cloud scan takes documents out of, say we emailed them to you. Do we print them? Do you print them out and then put them into the system to have the cloud scan do its capture system?
No, not at all. Cloud Scan basically takes the attachment or the PDF and uses that as the document from which to extract the data. So it uses that, the PDF email attachment, uses the various algorithms to find the data on the document, extract it, convert it to electronic, and then send it back to the supplier for validation, or it can also go to the AP group for validation.
Okay. Sandy, what about you? Is there a return on investment calculation of how you thought about supplier engagement? And when you thought about implementing your supplier solution, how did you figure the savings that you were going to have, if at all?
Right. So we didn't really look at an ROI for this segment of our P2P. We look at the ROI more over the whole P2P operation and measure it that way. As far as the supplier portal goes, we looked at it more as adding customer service for both the university end users and our suppliers, and that would be so valuable. And it does help with our dollar ROI, but I think the customer service experience outweighs that.
Okay, that's helpful. It's more indirect, and you're
And I think with the OFAC and PIN check, we'll feel like more in compliance than we have in the past.
Okay. And you might be, I guess, reducing the number of staff that you have answering the phone calls, but you haven't really quantified what that is yet.
Right, right. And we already only had 1.5 FTE involved in the entering of vendors, so I don't really see that shifting at all. We'll still need those people.
Right. It's not, yeah, it's too small to say you're going to shift down, and maybe it'll go to 1, but you don't know yet.
Right, right.
Well, thank you. We've reached the top of the hour, and that's all we have time for today in our program. If you were not able to ask your question, we'd be delighted to answer your question offline if we didn't get to you. You will get an email today containing a copy of today's presentation. This concludes today's session's Purchase-to-Pay 2020 webinar series. Please join us for the next webinar, which we'll get an invitation for in next week or so. We've been delighted to have joining us today Sandy Hicks from the CU Colorado University System and Vishal Patel from TradeShift. Thank you once again for being part of our session today, and we hope to see you on a future session.